pharmacology, respiratory, COVID-19, clinical research trials, evaluating the efficacy of hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin to prevent hospitalization or death in persons with COVID-19. This Phase 2b trial aimed to determine whether a short course of hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin could safely and effectively prevent disease progression among adults with mild to moderate COVID-19. Although recent research suggests that hydroxychloroquine may not be an effective treatment for patients hospitalized with COVID-19, the question of whether it offers benefit when given early in the course of the disease remains unanswered. The NIAID study, conducted by the AIDS Clinical Trials Group, sought to fill this knowledge gap by testing it in a randomized placebo-controlled trial, considered the gold standard for determining whether an intervention can benefit patients. The study, conducted at sites across the United States, planned to rapidly enroll approximately 2,000 adults who had laboratory-confirmed infection with SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19, and were experiencing symptoms consistent with COVID-19. Participants were randomly assigned to receive either hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin or matching placebo pills to take at home for 7 days. However, since its launch in May, the study had enrolled only 20 participants, despite efforts by the study sites to enhance recruitment, raising concerns that it would not be feasible to continue the trial to full enrollment. On June 15, 2020, the FDA revoked an emergency use authorization that had allowed hydroxychloroquine and the related drug chloroquine to be prescribed to hospitalized adolescents and adults with COVID-19. This revocation does not apply to clinical trials and is specific to hospitalized individuals rather than outpatients. However, the decision could have further dampened enthusiasm for enrollment in studies evaluating these drugs. Based on these considerations and in close consultation with the study team, NIAID determined that it was highly unlikely that the trial would be able to enroll to completion and meet its intended objectives. The Independent Data and Safety Monitoring Board, or DSMB, concurred with this assessment and agreed it would be best to close the trial. Immune response clinical trials. Characterizing immune responses in people with a history of coronavirus infection. An NIAID-supported study called HVTN 405/HPTN 1901 will describe immune responses to SARS-CoV-2 among people with a history of recovering from infection with the virus. This study also aims to develop antibody assays that can be reliably used in clinical research to detect immune responses to natural SARS-CoV-2 infection and distinguish them from responses to experimental vaccines and monoclonal antibodies against the virus. Information gathered in HVTN 405, HPTN 1901 will aid development of safe and effective vaccine and antibody interventions to prevent COVID-19. COVID-19 recovered specimen collection research study. Additional clinical research is underway to better understand the immune system's response to SARS-CoV-2 in order to inform the development of medical countermeasures against COVID-19. In one such study, the NIAID Vaccine Research Center in Bethesda, Maryland, is collecting blood samples from adults 18 years of age or older who are fully recovered from confirmed COVID-19 infection. The study to examine immune responses in people hospitalized with COVID-19. An NIAID-supported study being conducted at 10 research sites across the United States will track the immune responses of people hospitalized with COVID-19. Investigators in NIAID's Human Immunology Project Consortium, in collaboration with researchers at the Asthma and Allergic Diseases Clinical Research Consortium, aim to determine how certain immunological measures correspond to or may even predict the clinical severity of COVID-19. Data collected in the immunophenotyping assessment in a COVID-19 cohort, or IMPACC study, will help inform recommendations for COVID-19 care and hopefully identify new targets and optimal timing for experimental treatments. Immune response to COVID-19. Researchers in the divisions of intramural research at NIAID are spearheading a large international collaboration to unveil the innate and adaptive immune responses during acute COVID-19 infection and convalescence. This coalition of researchers will work with each other as well as with hospitals, willing to share specimens and data to maximize the impact of patient samples. The overall goal is to identify immunological and virological correlates and predictors of clinical outcomes. Observational study of coronavirus infection and multi-system inflammatory syndrome in children. The Division of Allergy, Immunology, and Transplantation at NIAID is funding an observational study to evaluate the short and long-term health outcomes of SARS-CoV-2 infection in children, including multi-system inflammatory syndrome in children, MIS-C, and to characterize the immunological pathways associated with different disease presentations and outcomes. The study, called the Pediatric Research Immune Network on SARS-CoV-2 and MIS-C, or PRISM, will enroll at least 250 children and young adults ages 20 years or younger from diverse racial and ethnic backgrounds at approximately 20 sites nationwide. The PRISM study is part of a research effort led by NIH's National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute, the Eunice Kennedy Shriver National Institute of Child Health and Human Development, to understand MIS-C. Epidemiological studies. The study to quantify undetected cases of coronavirus infection. A study at the NIH Clinical Center in Bethesda, Maryland, aims to determine how many adults in the United States without a confirmed history of infection with SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes coronavirus disease 2019 or COVID-19, have antibodies to the virus. The presence of antibodies in the blood indicates a prior infection. In this serosurvey, researchers will collect and analyze blood samples from as many as 10,000 volunteers to provide critical data for epidemiological models. The results will help illuminate the extent to which the novel coronavirus has spread undetected in the United States and provide insights into which communities and populations are most affected. The study to determine incidence of novel coronavirus infection in U.S. children. An NIAID-supported study is underway to help determine the rate of novel coronavirus infection in children and their family members in the United States. The study, called Human Epidemiology and Response to SARS-CoV-2, or HEROES, also will help determine what percentage of children infected with SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19, develop symptoms of the disease. In addition, the HEROES study will examine whether rates of SARS-CoV-2 infection differ between children who have asthma or other allergic conditions and children who do not. Participants are being recruited for HEROES from families who are already participating in one of 13 ongoing NIH-funded pediatric research studies. Families cannot volunteer for this study on their own. Natural history studies. The response team at the Integrated Research Facility in Frederick, Maryland, is actively engaged in the design of and support of multiple clinical studies. In partnership with Prevail in Liberia and Palm in the Democratic Republic of Congo, the team is developing and implementing natural history studies to examine and analyze the progression to severe COVID-19 disease in these populations. These studies will also provide insight into the spread of disease in this region and aid the ability of partners in the region to respond to this pandemic. The team is also supporting the ACT International trial with preparation of critical laboratory reagents. NIA volunteer for COVID-19 clinical studies. The NIAID is conducting and supporting a range of clinical studies to prevent, treat, and better understand coronavirus infectious disease, COVID-19, as well as the virus that causes it, SARS-CoV-2.